I'm Mike.
I'm Sam. Let's get into it.
Team would you least like to date your sister? And I might add, you're starting to be the runaway favorite for this.
Would nobody want me to date this? Is it? I'm a great guy. I'm actually a great guy.
There's actually seems to be a few guys that don't think that.
Feel differently about me?
Yeah.
They just don't know me well enough. That's what it is. Just a
Welcome to episode 54 of the Mike and Sam Sports Show. We got Hottest Takes podcast back on our episode. We're happy to have him again. We're going to do a WildCard weekend preview episode. I mean, we finally got through this NFL season, which has been crazy. The Broncos had a wide receiver start at quarterback. I mean, the Browns had the whole wide receiver room out with COVID. The Browns actually made the playoff, which is a pretty crazy thing considering. So we're excited to get into this. With the first matchup, we got my Colts versus the Bills. I mean, this is a very tough matchup for the Colts. The Bills have come in extremely hot the past couple weeks, so sad to say I'm going to go with the Bills, but I think the Colts could, if Phil Rivers does play well and the defense shows up to their number one ranked defense, I think that the Colts can compete, but I think the Bills' offense is way too powerful.
Yeah, I think the Bills are way too great of a team right in this matchup. And I just wanted to quickly thank you guys for having us on again. We're happy to be here. But yeah, Josh Allen has just been absolutely amazing this year, lights out in the MVP conversation. You know, he's throwing at almost 70% completion percentage, which is crazy for a guy who came into this league with questions about his completions and his accuracy and just more of a deep ball guy. But he can also get it done on the ground. And we talked about that earlier when I came on the show back in September. I just think he's too powerful, and that defense is good. And they have lockdown corners like Tre'Davious White. You got Jordan Poyer at safety. I just don't think – I mean, the Colts are a great team. They have a great defense, don't get me wrong. I just think it's going to be a little bit too much for them to handle.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, thank you. This is my first time coming on the Sam and Mike podcast, so I'm super excited to be here. But I agree. Here's the thing. I think the Bills are beatable. We've seen how well the offseason acquisition of Stephon Diggs has worked for them and for the Vikings for that matter. But with that said, I still think that the offense is going to be too much for the Colts. I think the Colts are honestly pretenders. I don't see them going super far in the bracket. So, again, I agree with you, John. I'm picking the Bills in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Bills as well. It's just looking at this Colts roster, I think they're one elite quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. I think they're one elite quarterback away, maybe an Andrew Luck, from being that team that could compete with the Chiefs. Sorry, Sam. I really do think this game is just going to come down to the sheer firepower of the Bills' offense. I believe that there is slight potential for upset just because of what we did see from Josh Allen last year in the playoffs, what we did see from him in 2019. I think he's way better than he is at the beginning of his career. Again, I do think the Bills are going to win this game, but if they do lose, I think we'll see a couple 2019, 2018 Josh Allen mistakes pop up in this game. But again, I don't expect that to happen. I do think the Bills are going to win this football game.
Yeah, I can see the Colts competing this whole game, and then Rivers just becomes vintage Rivers and just lays a dud in the fourth quarter. I can completely see that happening, but the Bills are sweeping this game in our eyes, 4 votes to 0. Moving on to the next game on Saturday, we have Rams at the Seahawks. This is the rubber match. I mean, they split the 2 games earlier in the season. It's unknown what Jared Goff's status is going to be, but they did play well with John Wolford at quarterback. I mean, it kind of with Goff out. I mean, Goff is a game manager, and McVay is calling a lot of the shots, so it's not really that far off from what Goff is going to be with Wolford in the game. But right now, I think I'm going to have the Seahawks winning this game. They are playing a lot better than they had a little stall out in the middle of the year. Their defense is playing a little bit better than they were at the beginning of the year, so I'm going to go with the Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you again, Sam. I think the Seahawks are going to win this game. I just think Russell Wilson's experience and exposure in the playoffs will lead this team over them. I mean, he's a great leader. I know he was in the MVP conversation more towards the beginning of the year, fell off a little bit. Had 13 picks, which is close to a career high for him. But I don't think Jared Goff is anything special. And, yeah, he's a game manager, and, yeah, he can get it done. He got him to the Super Bowl. But when they face elite talent, I just don't think he's at his best. I don't think it'll be enough to beat the Seahawks.
I agree with both points you guys just made there. For sake of switching it up, I'm actually going to take the Rams in this one because the Rams have actually historically been pretty good against the Seahawks. I don't remember the exact win-loss ratio, but I know they split this year, but they've been pretty good. The Rams have had their number, and sometimes teams in the NFL do that. Again, Jared Goff being able to play, I think, does make a big difference. I don't think John Wolford, I don't think he's a huge step behind Goff, but at the same time, he's definitely not at the equal level. And then the Seahawks, it's hard to root against them in the playoffs. They're so good in the playoffs. It seems like they always step up. But just for sake of switching it up, I'm going to take the Rams here.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Jack on that. And I'm assuming with this prediction that Jared Goff is going to play. Again, I think Walford has a pretty high floor to his game. I watched him every snap of the Cardinals game. He's a pretty good backup quarterback, and he's pretty scrappy. But again, I do think Jared Goff provides more of an upside than Walford does. And just looking at this Rams team in the past really 3 years, the teams that have been able to beat the Rams have been teams with pass rushes is because, again, Jared Goff doesn't have a lot of mobility in the pocket, and this Rams offensive line is pretty poor. I think it is a bottom 5 offensive line in the league. And when you look at the Seahawks team, why they're such a bad matchup against the Rams is because, A, they don't have a pass rush to generate against the Rams and exploit their weakness, and B, their offensive weapons really are limited by the Rams defense. Aaron Donald has continued to be the best defender in the NFL this season. And Jalen Ramsey, from a physical standpoint, does match up against DK Metcalf extremely well. So if DK is able to be limited in this game, which I do think he will be, and if the Rams are able to generate enough offense, I do think the Rams are going to win this football game.
Yeah, for me, this is a game that I can see going either ways. I think it's pretty close to 50-50 split. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I was texting Michael and I said, hey, I think the Rams are a sneaky Super Bowl favorite. And then that same week, they lost to the Jets. So I just think with watching that Jets game, I'm going to go with the Seahawks. But moving on to our next game, I think I'm pretty interested in this game. A lot of people might think it's a wash, but the Buccaneers at the Washington football team. I mean, I'm not saying the Washington's going to win, but I think the Buccaneers will win. But I think it's going to be a close game than more people will give credit to. Washington has a very scary defense. And historically, when you look at Brady's playoff runs, like those 2 Super Bowls against the Giants, he got hit a lot. He was on the ground a lot. Against the Broncos in the playoffs, he got hit a lot. And even this year with the Bears, the Saints, they pressured him a lot, and that's when he crumbles. So if this Washington team is able to pressure Brady, it's going to be a long game for him. It all just comes down to what Washington is able to do on offense with Alex Smith or the backup quarterback. I know Rivera was talking about kind of doing a little have one quarterback in one drive and the next one another drive. So I think I'm going to pick the Bucs, but I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Washington football team here. And I know it's not the popular pick, but I'm going to take the upset here. The football team is 6th in the NFL in sacks. And like you said, Brady has been not great under pressure when he's in the playoffs. And, I mean, for the football team, they have 5 former first-rounders on their defensive line. And that creates a lot of pressure. Montez Sweat has had a great year. Chase Young is doing great in his rookie year. And then you have Deron Page, Jonathan Allen, Ryan Kerrigan. I mean, I just think it'll be too much at the end of the day. And I think Washington will be able to get it done on the ground, especially with Antonio Gibson, who Jack and I are both pretty high on. So I'm going to take Washington here.
Yeah, Washington's a really popular upset pick. I've heard throughout talking with various people about the playoffs. And I like it because Brady, even this season, has struggled against teams with better defenses. But I'm going to take the Buccaneers in this one because of A, playoff Brady, and B, the fact that they've actually kind of turned it around since their Chiefs game. They've played some somewhat porous defenses, but they've scored over 30 in the last 3 weeks and over 40 in the last 2 weeks. They really seem to kind of be hitting their stride at the right time. And I don't know if that offense of Washington is going to be able to hang up. And again, their defense has been spectacular this year, but do they have the experience? I'm not quite sure. So I'm going to take the Buccaneers in this one.
Yeah, those are all great points. And going into this, I thought that the Buccaneers were a shoo-in victory. I thought it was going to be a blowout, but you guys actually brought up some really good points, and that is very true about Tom Brady, especially in year 21 of his career. His mobility is very limited, and he does struggle historically against teams with great pass rushes. And I think that Ron Rivera is going to go into this football game. It's a home football game for the Washington football team, and really just balls to the wall. We're going to have a lot of exotic play calls, and we're going to risk it all. And if it ends up blowing up in our face, that's okay, because we tried to go extreme instead of going conservative here. And I do think that's going to be the approach the football team takes. But simply put, I think the Buccaneers have too many weapons on offense for the football team to account for. I think we're going to see a couple blown coverages, and I think we're going to see some wide open, either Chris Godwin. I think Mike Evans is out in this game, but Gronk, Antonio Brown, I think one of those guys is going to have a breakout game, and I do think the Buccaneers are going to have the victory there.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many weapons on that Buccaneers offense. I know Evans, yeah, like you said, he might not be playing this game, but Antonio Brown is slowly getting more snaps. I mean, last week I think Brady gave him like 3 like short passes at the end of the game just so he can get like a little more money on his contract. But it just shows how strong the relationship is. But I think I think it's gonna be a close game. I'm excited to watch this one, even though it is a 7-9 team versus 11-5. Moving on to our next matchup, we have the Ravens at the Titans. I think this is the game I'm most excited for this playoff matchup. These teams played each other. This will be the third time in the 2020-21 like time frame. The Ravens lost to the Titans the last 2 times. One of the playoffs where Derrick Henry made Earl Thomas look like a lead blocker, and then the last time was when Derrick Henry had a walk-off touchdown in overtime. But with that being said, I'm going to go with the Ravens. The Ravens have been playing really well as recently. Lamar looks like an MVP. Switching from Mark Ingram to Dobbins has been an awesome move they made. I mean, I love Dobbins. He's an Ohio State alum, so got to love him. But that just shows that, like, if they just pound the ball, if they just abandon the passing game a little bit and just run the ball down the throats, like, no one can stop them. So I'm going to go with the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens are super hot right now. They've won 5 straight games. I don't know if you could come into the playoffs in a better wave than they are. But with this one, I'm going to go with the Titans, and it's just because their passing game is above the Ravens. And this could be a really, really quick game because they are both ground and pound teams with Derrick Henry, and then you got Lamar, J.K. Dobbins, and Mark Ingram on the other side. The thing is who's going to be able to slow it down? If the Titans are able to get off to an early lead, then it's so hard to come back on them with Derrick Henry running the ball. And they're capable of getting off to an early lead because they have guys like Corey Davis and A.J. Brown and Jonnu Smith. So I'm going to take the Titans here. I think they barely win it, but I think their passing game will just put them over the top versus the Ravens here.
Yeah, out of all the playoff games outside of the Browns-Steelers, this is the game I think I'm most excited for, the rematch of last year. It'll be really interesting to see if Lamar can get it done. So, before I tell you who I'm going to pick, I'll preface with this is I think that the team that gets ahead early is going to be the team that wins. The team that can establish that run game and take control of the clock is the team I think is going to win. If you get Derrick Henry going, he's obviously tough to stop. Over 2,000 rushing yards this season, you're not going to stop him. But like everything you said about Lamar and the Ravens is so true. You know, they're so hot right now coming into the playoffs, and they had their struggles that maybe humbled them a little bit. And so I think that I would not be surprised if Lamar got his first playoff win this season at all. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Ravens in this one as well.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Ravens in this game too. And just to preface, I did like the Titans going into that divisional round last year. I actually picked the Titans to beat the Ravens this year, which they ended up doing in overtime. So I really do think that the Titans impose a very tough matchup on this Ravens football team. But I think for the majority of the season for the Ravens until that 5-game winning streak, they kind of looked themselves in the mirror. They said, here are the things we do bad, so we're going to try to do them and improve on them. And I think the Ravens got to the point where we might not even make the playoffs. Let's abandon trying to improve upon our weaknesses and let's just go at what we are very good at. And kind of that approach, getting back to the read option, getting back to the basics with this offense has really benefited them. And I do think they're going to ride that wave into the wild card weekend with a huge chip on their shoulder. I think Lamar Jackson is going to get that metaphorical monkey off his back, and I do think he's going to get the first playoff win of his career.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very close game. I can see it going into overtime. I mean, Derrick Henry is just so good. I think Derrick Henry has the sneakiest 2,000-yard season ever. I didn't even know he was going to be close to rushing for 2,000 yards until like week 17. That's just so how good he is, and he's just so calm and doesn't really he's very humble. But excited for this game. Moving on to the next one, we have the Bears at the Saints. I'm going to go with the Saints for this one, but I could see it being a close game. I know we don't know what the status with Kamara is, and I know Michael Thomas is day-to-day right now at practice, so that kind of takes two safety blankets away from Drew Brees, an aging Drew Brees who can't really move the ball down the field. If Kamara's out, Latavius Murray, or I don't even know if Latavius Murray's going to be playing if he has COVID either. So it just takes a lot of the help that Drew Brees has away from him. And the Bears defense, they have a solid defense. Akeem Nicks is one of the best D tacklers in football, so he's going to clog the middle and hit Drew Brees a lot. And Mitch is playing great, so I could see the Bears upsetting this, but I'm going to take the safe pick and go with the Saints.
I'm going to go with the Saints, and I really like the point that you brought up that it's going to be closer than people think it is. The Saints are 12-4, the Bears are 8-8, but the Bears defense just puts them in games and makes them compete with other teams a lot closer than people think they do. Obviously, I don't think Trubisky is going to be able to get it done in the playoffs, but I just think the Saints' high-octane offense will be able to push them over the top versus the Bears.
Yeah, so I've actually been for years now a huge anti-Saints fan when it comes to them in the playoffs. I think they always do the same thing. They struggle coming into the playoffs and then they lose in the first round. This year feels a little bit different though, in the sense that Drew Brees was out, so they didn't have that same kind of trajectory. And I think they're actually playing really well. I know that if Kamara's out, that's a huge downgrade. They put Michael Thomas on the IR a few weeks ago in hopes that he would be 100% for the playoffs. He's still day-to-day. I think despite any of that, I think the Saints are winning this game. And I think the Saints are probably maybe the third best team in football when they're healthy. Obviously, that's up for debate, but I think they'll take care of business versus Mitch Trubisky and the Bears. I don't think that they're legitimate at all.
Yeah, it always makes me very nervous to pick a team to win a playoff game when I think there's such a coaching disparity, which there is, in my opinion, between Sean Payton and Matt Nagy. I think Sean Payton is just a significantly better coach than Matt Nagy. I think Matt Nagy has gotten too bit of a long leash with his time in Chicago. With all that being said, I am going to pick the Bears in this game. Again, I've really disliked the Saints the past couple of years in the playoffs. They've just really left a bad taste in my mouth. I think their offense becomes very predictable with the short to intermediate passing game. And if Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray are out, especially Latavius Murray, who in between the tackles, he's a really good change of pace running back where if their outside zone stuff isn't working, Latavius Murray is legitimately very good at getting them tough yardage. So if both of those running backs are out in this football game, Michael Thomas is going to be shaking off the rust, in my opinion, in this game. And let's not forget that Mitch Trubisky has played in one playoff game. In that playoff game, they were a very short missed field goal away from beating the Seattle Seahawks. So I do think that Mitch Trubisky is going to play not great, not good, but good enough to get this win. Not in Chicago, but as the wild card team in New Orleans in the Dome.
Yeah, I mean, let it be known that in Week 8, the Saints beat the Bears in overtime, so it was a very close game. And the Bears were hot at the beginning of the year, and they were hot at the end of the year, so they can kind of carry that streak into the playoffs. Moving on to, I think, what is the most important game for you guys. The Browns at the Steelers. The Browns break the curse, making the playoffs for the first time since 2002. But with that, breaking that curse, they did get a little more curse on them with Kevin Stefanski and a lot of their coaching staff coming down with COVID and their status unknown for if they're going to be able to be on the sideline for this playoff game. But I'm going to go with the Steelers, unfortunately for you guys. I think with the hit of the coaching staff and not having that concrete figure with Stefanski on the sideline is going to hurt the Browns a lot with such an inexperienced squad in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be such a tough one for the Browns. You go to Pittsburgh where you haven't won in ages, especially versus Roethlisberger. And I just want to say real quick that I think it's progress, first of all, for the Browns to just make the playoffs in general. and I'm happy with the place that we are. Even if we don't win this playoff game, it's going to be a tricky one, but I mean, there's a whole lot more to dive into that, but I'm just happy the Browns are in the playoffs first off. But the Browns have 9 guys on the COVID list. You could get about 4 or 5 of those back before the game starts. But you also have 5 coaches on the COVID list, 3 of which are on offense, and then obviously our head coach who calls our plays. So, I mean, it's tough enough to practice a whole week without 4 of your offensive coaches. How is that going to work when you're playing one of the best defensive teams in the entire NFL? So it's going to be a really tough one to lose. I mean, to win. It might not be tough to lose. My bad. But when I came on week 4 with you guys, we were playing the Cowboys, and I said the Cowboys were going to win. And the Browns ended up winning it and scoring like 49 points. So I'm not going to jinx us again. So I'm going to take the Steelers here.
Yeah, so, this is an interesting situation that the Browns are in. They haven't made the playoffs in forever, and then they lose their head coach. I do think that Stefanski is able to practice with the team, not practice with the team, but be there virtually and walk them through leading up. I don't think he's able to coach the game, but he'll at least be there for the week helping the other coaches get the game plan. I think Alex Van Pelt is calling plays for the Browns, who's been there all season. With that said, going to Pittsburgh, where Ben Roethlisberger has been almost undefeated against the Browns at home, it's going to be a very tough task. I think, for any casual fans watching this, you might think this is going to be a blowout for the Steelers. I wouldn't sleep on the Browns because when they do have something to play for and when they get some momentum, they can really come together as a unit. I also think the Steelers not having Devin Bush and Bud Dupree has been huge as far as Baker Mayfield's success against the Steelers. He really struggles sometimes when there's a lot of pressure in his face. So having a little bit less is going to be a little bit of an equalizer. I think we talked the other week, John, that, if the Browns can establish this running game and force the Steelers to throw, then the Browns have a chance in this game. But, Browns bias aside, I do think the Steelers will come through in this one and prevail.
So I am actually going to pick the Cleveland Browns to win this football game. Going off of John's point, when he did come on the podcast, I believe to my memory, I did pick the Browns to win that football game. I'm a huge Nick Chubb fan. I think there's a culture problem with the Steelers where when they're really successful, when they're doing really good, they're very high and they ride that high wave. But when they kind of get hit in the mouth and they get down, they get very discouraged. And I think things could kind of spiral out of control for the Steelers team. I think that Kevin Stefanski obviously had a lot of playoff success with those Minnesota Vikings teams. I believe he was a huge part in that Minnesota Miracle. I know they did end up getting blown out in that NFC Championship game against against the Eagles. Nonetheless, I think Kevin Stefanski knows how to win playoff football games. I think this team has a huge chip on their shoulder. I think they want to win this game for Cleveland. And again, I think that Nick Chubb is going to have at least 100 yards in this football game. Again, Bud Dupree and Devin Bush, I think their absence has been way understated. I think Jack hit a great point on that. And Ben Roethlisberger and his arm talent and just this offense, I think they've been lacking identity with their lack of run game as of late. And I do think that's going to propel the Browns to a victory here.
Yeah, I think if Cleveland wins this game, I think that'd just be massive for the state of Ohio. I think people would, because so many Ohio State or Cleveland sports fans have been down for so many years. I mean, the Cavs won a couple years the NBA Finals, which was huge for the city. I think if the Browns won a football game, I think that the whole city would go berserk. Everyone would go insane and be a huge party for a week.
I agree. I also will say that if the Browns get past the Steelers and get Stefanski and some of these players back, I actually think they have a better chance at going to the championship game. I think the Steelers game is going to be our hardest game. If we are able to get past them, and no shade to the Bills or Colts, but I think the Bills are beatable, especially because it'll be a battle of offenses in that case. Baker is a little bit better when he's throwing against a slightly worse defense. So that'll be something to watch out for, but we'll see. We got to get past the Steelers first.
Yeah, if the Browns can hop this roadblock without these pieces that they're missing, then I definitely think it's possible for them to make it to the AFC Championship. And playing the Chiefs is a whole different conversation there. But the Bills, the Colts, the Ravens, the Titans, I definitely think those are teams that they could beat.
Yeah, I joked at the beginning of the season on the podcast that it's a COVID season. It's a really weird year. I think that it would be a good idea to put a $5, $10 bet on a team like the football team or a team like the Browns to win the Super Bowl, just because, again, we saw with the scab season way back in the day, the football team won the championship that year. And in similar seasons where in a lockout season, I believe it was in 2011, and just weird things happen in the playoffs. So what better of a time for the Browns to make the playoffs than this COVID year? Of course, again, it's a huge blow for their coaching staff to go down and some of their players. But if a fluky, weird thing could happen, it would be this season. It would be this playoff run. And again, you guys made great points. If the Browns get past the Steelers, I actually do like their matchup against the Bills. I do like their matchup against the Colts. And I even think that a team could give the Chiefs a run for their money, as we will get into in the divisional round preview. I think the Chiefs have been vulnerable the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the past couple of weeks, Mahomes, who people is talking about being this messiah quarterback making no mistakes, he's looked like a human these past couple of weeks, having a couple turnovers. So if he's playing like a stout defense, I can see them struggling in a playoff game in cold weather in Kansas City. That being said, I'll ask you guys, as the Packers and as the Chiefs, which teams would you want to face and what teams would you not want to face entering the bye week?
I mean, of course, I think it's a little funny when analysis say, oh, they really don't want to see them or they really want to see them. At the end of the day, it is playoff football. You are going to go against a very good football team. You're going to go against a good playoff team. I think for the Green Bay Packers, even though the Buccaneers have really struggled through this season, they've had a lot up and downs. I mean, if you look at the one game Aaron Rodgers did not play well, even in his MVP campaign, you look at the week where Devontae Adams looked really poor. It was against that Buccaneers team. So I think there is a mental aspect of that game for the Packers, for them to be a bit nervous playing the Buccaneers because they did get absolutely blown out in that game. We know Tom Brady is one of the few quarterbacks in the NFC, in my opinion, in this playoff bracket, who has been a proven winner time and time again in cold weather football. It's going to be very cold up in Lambeau if they reach the divisional round. Or I believe if the Buccaneers played the Packers, it would be in the NFC Championship game. It would not be in WildCard weekend. So we're talking about 10 degrees, 5 degrees. I think Tom Brady for the Packers would be a quarterback they would not want to see there.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think Brady is a team they wouldn't want to see. I mean Brady's team. I mean, they have a great defensive line. They're like second in the league in sacks. Vita Vea has like really stepped up in his second year, and if they can apply pressure to Rodgers, then I mean that defense is good. And like Jamal Dean and those guys have played well this year and stepped up a lot for their secondary. And then regarding the AFC for the Chiefs, I think the Bills should be a team to watch. And I don't know. They play cold weather football. They're used to it. And the Chiefs, I know they play in the cold too. They play in the snow, and they did it last year. But up in Buffalo, it snows a lot. And you guys are on the East Coast. You know how rough it gets up there. So I think the Bills are built to win in the playoffs, just like a team like the Browns. They're able to run the ball, but Josh Allen can run it too, and he can pass it. So I think it would be a dangerous team for the Chiefs to see in the AFC Championship or in any round.
I agree with both of those picks. I would take the Buccaneers for the Packers and the Bills for the Chiefs. The Chiefs have proven they've had the Ravens number every time Lamar's played them. He's lost. They proved that they could stop the Titans in the playoffs last year and stop Derrick Henry. We'll see, any given day. But I think the Bills are easily the team that I would be most scared to play if I were the Chiefs. And Mike, you brought up a good point. I don't think any team you really are like scared to play, but I do think the Bills match up against them the best. Their offense could probably hang with Mahomes the best out of all those teams. And then, like you said, the Buccaneers beat the Packers earlier in the season, and Tom Brady in the playoffs is not someone I want to see. So I would agree with both those takes.
Yeah, I'll say the Buccaneers for the NFC, but really in my mind, I think there's no one that can compete with the Packers right now. They're just playing their best football right now. I mean, they're getting A.J. Dillon involved. Jamal Williams is solid. We know Devontae Adams is going to be great. We know Aaron Jones is going to be great. And Aaron Rodgers is just putting like a cherry on top of his MVP season. He's played the best since he has in quite some time. So I think the Buccaneers, it's a potential to play the Buccaneers in the NFC Championship. But I think the Packers are going to come out of the NFC. And for me, looking at the AFC, honestly, I think the Ravens are going to be the Titans of last year. You know, the Titans, they beat the Patriots, Tom Brady's last season in New England. They beat the Ravens, and they almost beat the Chiefs. I can see the Ravens going on a small run like that. I think if Lamar's able to win one playoff game, that's going to kind of, like Michael said, take the monkey off his back, where he gets more confidence, and he can, if they go into the next round and get another game, I think it's going to be a fight if they play the Chiefs, but I can see them maybe even beating the Chiefs, because I think if they get momentum, they're going to be a hard team to stop.
Yeah, the Chiefs at the beginning of the season, I thought they were an absolute Golden State Warrior 2017 to 2018 lock to win the championship. And kind of looking back on that, I disagree. And I do think that they are a vulnerable football team. Let's not forget, they were down 24-0 in the divisional round of the playoffs last year. And if it wasn't for them playing an absolutely incompetent head coach in Bill O'Brien, the Chiefs are losing in the divisional round. And we're looking at the Chiefs not even being a Super Bowl champion last year, and we're kind of questioning the Chiefs, I think, going into this playoff run, but they end up coming back from 24-0. They end up pretty convincingly beating the Titans, and then, of course, they're down 10 going into the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl last year. But I do think that the Chiefs, with kind of their recent struggles, just beating the Falcons 17-14, they have this kind of laziness to their offense at times. I know, very kind of ridiculed for calling a Patrick Mahomes deep ball on a 4th and 1 where they had Patrick Mahomes go out for a pass. So I do think that the Chiefs' worst enemies are themselves. And I think if the Chiefs end up losing this playoff run, whether that be in the AFC or whether that be in the Super Bowl, it will be self-inflicted wounds. So again, I think the Chiefs are the favorite to win the Super Bowl for a reason. They went 15-1 for a reason. But I think the Colts laid out an interesting blueprint to beat the Chiefs, not this year, but last year, where they only rushed 4 and they played coverage and they let Patrick Mahomes stay in the pocket, not extend the play, and make mistakes. So I think if a team could do that, score almost every single possession on offense, I do think the Chiefs have upset potential. But again, they're Super Bowl favorites for a reason. I do think they're going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, me and you at the beginning of the year, I think we both had 49ers Chiefs Super Bowl 2.0, but hopefully we're 50% correct and not 0% correct.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode with Hottest Takes podcast. We're going to maybe do a little mini series for this whole playoff duration, but I hope you guys enjoyed listening, and we'll see you in the next one.